Welcome back to part two of our interview with our super specialist. We're going to get into a little bit of his metrics today, a little bit of his vision for his practice. I'll have George with us on the outro, who's going to do a live kind of digesting of his metrics to practice or practice by numbers. So we'll get right into it. Here's the second part of our interview with our guest.
And what happened was I have a small practice, right? So I have, do you want me to tell you about staff numbers and how many chairs?
Sure, but yeah, we're going to start pivoting into more in your practice now.
Okay, go ahead. So am I jumping ahead or do you want to ask?
No, go for it.
So my practice has 1,200 square foot. It's a lease space, and I have one hygienist, one assistant, or I had one hygienist, one assistant, and one front desk. So 3 chairs. And a side chair, which is for the post-ops or small stuff you can't do. It's like a den that has a chair in it. So 3.5 to be exact. What happened was I couldn't really push things because the front desk girl is basically checking patients out, answering phone calls, presenting treatment, going through insurance and all that stuff. And she's brilliant. She's a superstar, but she was getting overwhelmed. So hygienist went from maybe seeing 3 patients a day, 4 patients a day to a patient per hour because of the flow. We had a lot more influx of patients after I joined. So and the assistant is running like a chicken with no head, So I couldn't really push. But what I did was I hired a second assistant. And we just hired a second hygienist and the prosthodontist. So
that's good because I'm looking at what you're doing, your numbers, and trying to imagine one assistant handling all this, and just feeling impossible. Bad for her.
It's impossible, but I thought that I better keep the overhead low. And to me, the biggest overhead is the personnel. And I didn't want to go too far, but she's expanded function and she does well. But we needed a second warm body. But then,
Yeah, here's one place I differ with a lot of people. It's like that extra assistant costs you what a day?
So
I don't know, 150, 200.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just think of like the little extra I would have to do to cover that expense, like the one extra same day. And we're going to get into this, but you're a big same day dentistry guy. So the one extra filling I could do a day because I had that second hygienist or second assistant, I just paid for. So it seems like a no brainer to me.
Yes, that's very true.
So you brought on this extra hygienist and assistant recently.
Yes. So the second assistant was a month, probably 3-4 weeks, mid-July, probably something like that, or end of July, and then end of July, and then the hygienist is going to start in September. I turned my office into an operatory, so a 4th operatory. So now basically I have 4.5 chairs. I ordered the chair. The chair is arriving next week, and so I remodeled, I plumbed my office, and we had a little chart room that I turned it into my office / staff lounge. So everybody takes turns to sit next to me, have lunch, and they vent.
You are maximizing that office space, that 1,200 square foot, fully maxed.
But to be honest with you, because it was built 25 years ago, they're so inefficient. And otherwise, right now, in a 1,200 square foot, you should be able to easily fit 4, maybe 5 chairs fully. And I had to struggle. So, basically I spent $50,000 last week to upgrade and buy a chair. And I upgraded the IT system because the IT was, these computers were very old. And so all the money is going back. And I bought a CT scan. I'm about to buy an intraoral scanner towards the end of the year. But the problem is I don't know which one to buy. Because
go for the Medit.
Yes, but what about for Invisalign though?
There are other options out there.
There are other options, I know, but Medit is very good. Are you happy with it?
I really do love it. And I think the cost is
absolutely.
Can't beat it, and no fees. And I think it scans
maybe I
beautifully.
can buy Medit or something else so I can.
Yeah, just a little toy for you. All right. Well, let's get more into your dashboard because, that's why we're here just
That's
to
correct.
go through the software. And so looking through it, I mean, you use practice by numbers, obviously. We talked about that. What do you see as
Okay.
let's
Great
start with the places
question.
you're falling short. Like, what do you see in your dashboard?
So the
What
first thing I saw was that my collections were very low, and I was keep finding myself, I'm getting mad at my superstar employee. And then when I sat down and talked to my coach, it's very natural because she's being pulled in 10 different directions and she can't, collect and do all that stuff that I explained earlier. So the solution to that, I outsourced the insurance. And do you want me to tell you which company or no?
Sure.
Okay. So I went to eAssist and they changed my basically life, I would say. I mean, it was just
Tell me
crazy.
more.
It was crazy because we were extremely behind collections, and they have this is a very well-oiled machine, in my opinion. I feel like they're specialists in insurance billing, and things that we couldn't get money for, they're doing it. They charge fairly good amount of money for it, but it's worth it because my front desk is free up. I can either hire a second person, an insurance person, or I can pay these people to do it, and they do it every day. And I couldn't be happier with them. I got a second option which they do for patient collections, so for AR, which I know is my problem because my insurance AR went way down. But my patient AR is still high, so I hired them, and also I hired them to do my balancing because I have two kids. When I leave the office, I listen to podcasts, come home, and then there are two kids waiting in the door for me at the garage as soon as I pull in, and they want to play, and I really want to spend time with them because my wife has had it with them. She came home.
I mean, just getting you to schedule this interview was,
crazy.
It was hard.
Do you know why we pushed it back 45 minutes? Because my 1-year-old wouldn't want to sleep, so I had to keep trying to. I was praying that
he wants to spend time with his daddy.
No, he wanted to. I was like, I can't push Matt anymore back. He's gonna kill me. Anyhow, so the beauty of it is that they check your balances, so you never have to worry about embezzlement. You don't have to check to see if the money that the insurance says they paid through EFT, did it show up in your account? Did it not? I don't know. I didn't have time to go check. But at least I know somebody's checking for me, and I'm happy to pay that because I can focus on growing. Others.
And that's something you saw on your dashboard. You knew was a problem, and you looked for solutions.
Yes, because I was collecting 60-70% or something like that, and I was like, "This is ridiculous." And my coach kept yelling at me, like, "What the hell is going on there?" And I'm like, I can't pull my office manager anymore. And he's like, "Yeah." So that was I think truly, if you ask me, what was the smartest decision I made? And I got this information at the CE course from a colleague. This is, one thing Mark Costas always says is that when you go to a CE course, you may not learn as much as after hours when you talk to people.
Definitely. That's always what the best learning is.
That's when the magic happens.
Yeah, sitting at the bar having drinks or at dinner, and you're with like-minded people.
Exactly right. And we are, I think you're the same way. I would love to share with others. I don't want to be the only one who is, I feel like I have had fairly good success for the first year, but I would love for others to follow my path if they, so sharing. They say sharing is caring or whatever.
That's right.
I would love to share, and that's how we all learn.
Yeah, and thank you for being open for this experience. Putting your practice on loudspeakers. Not a comfortable thing for a lot of people, and so I appreciate that.
Listen, they did it for me. I'm doing it for others.
That's right, giving back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go through some of this stuff. Let's get a little nitty gritty on some of these numbers. Shall we start with what I see are the good points or the
whatever? Start whatever you want.
Yeah, we'll start good.
Good or bad.
I think what jumped out to me looking at your dashboard is you are offering very comprehensive treatment, and that goes with your clinical skills. The average treatment plan you're presenting is over 3,000. The average accepted is over 22, 25, 2,300. very high. Those are both above 75th percentiles of PBN users. So you're offering higher level services at a very nice cost and getting it accepted well.
Can I stop you for a second? I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to see the averages on PBN? Because Rohit said that he was coming, but he said Q2 initially, then he said Q3. And are you able?
So this is one benefit of being one of Rohit's best friends.
Ah,
that I have these.
What do I need to do to become Rohit's best friend? Rohit, if you're listening to this, I would love to. I've been asking you for this.
Rohit better be listening to this, all right?
I've been asking you for a year now. Could you please let me? Because I have no idea how I'm doing.
Well, that'll make you listen to all these different episodes, because I'm gonna give away a lot of this stuff, and then you can just jot them down, and then you'll have them for yourself.
Okay.
So, anyways, back to how good your treatment planning.
Yes.
Their big cases, you're doing well with acceptance. Your patient acceptance above 85%. That's at a very good spot. Your treatment planning acceptance is also very high. It's above 60%. You're doing a lot of indirects versus fillings. Your restoration of crowns at 1.7, which is extremely at a low range. So you're comprehensively diagnosing, you're comprehensively treatment planning, and you're selling dentistry well. So tell us how that's going.
As far as the crowns and bridge, I really not a big fan of fillings. Maybe that has to
those come out in these numbers.
I either don't do it, or if I have to do it, I did one today on a 16-year-old, and I was talking to myself, but I look at things comprehensively, exactly what it is. One of the things they told us repeatedly in our residencies and fellowship was, don't look at the patient through a binocular or microscope or binocular or tunnel vision. I think there was the word tunnel vision, and you should look at everything. And I try to talk to I see every patient the same way. I probe full mouth. I look at recessions. I look at mobility. Then I check that with X-rays. Then I look at decay. I verify with X-ray, and same thing. And then if it's a all-on-4 type deal, I take upper-lower diagnostics and I bring them back and I present, and I just sit down and look at it. So I feel that I almost look at it as coming from a look, an abundance kind of vision. If you think that the patient can afford it, I better do little stuff because they get offended, or you're not doing them a service. So I try to, and I tell you, it is hard. Sometimes I am struggling to tell them, you really should change this crown, or sometimes they really need it and they don't want to. So, but I think that the best way is to everybody, even though they say, I have a tooth lower right that hurts, tell them, I'm going to just look at upper left, starting from upper right, and then make my way down. Tell the patient that, and then do it so that you don't miss anything. So, and also CT scans. If you can buy a CT scan, because it will give your diagnostic abilities a huge boost. I really believe in it.
Before we get back to the episode, I wanted to take a minute and thank Practice by Numbers. Without their help and allowing us to set up the Shared Practices dashboard, a lot of what we do on Practice Underwater wouldn't be possible. I want to take a minute and highlight a clip from the episode that we did with Rohit, where we highlighted some of the metrics that really matter most.
You cannot look at them just by themselves. You have to look at a few other things together with it. But the most important number any practice right off the bat should look at is patient acceptance. And the difference between treatment acceptance and patient acceptance is treatment acceptance is the amount of dollars that were accepted. For example, if you presented $100,000 worth of treatment, how much of that has been accepted, meaning scheduled or completed? Okay. So in this particular example, if 100,000 was presented, 55,000 was accepted, or either scheduled or completed. But the second part is 72%, which is the patient acceptance. What this means is that if you presented $100,000 worth of treatment to 100 patients, meaning $1,000 per patient, 72 of those patients scheduled some aspect of that treatment. Looking at patient acceptance is the absolute best way to go.
I hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you guys are interested in trying out Practice by Numbers and looking at your practice through the Shared Practices dashboard, and there are many other dashboards, you can go to practicebynumbers.com and set up a free trial.
It sounds like you're basically allowing yourself, you're not making the decision for the person. You're merely reflecting what you see, the evidence, the potential downfalls of not doing anything, the solutions that are available, but you're not prejudging that person and saying, hey, this person either doesn't value it, can't afford it, doesn't want it. Like you're not, and that's a big hang up, I think, for a lot of dentists.
Yes. And here's another thing, Matt, which you touched my life. You don't even know it. About a year ago, I think last October, November, I think you posted something about intraoral camera mouthwash.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that picture. You were sitting down with an iPad in your hand and said, and I looked at that and I said, oh, I sent you a message and I said, what is this and how do I get it? And you were so kind.
That's right. I totally forgot that. Oh my gosh.
You were so kind and you were answered me and it was at the beginning, one of those late, I think it was 1 a.m. So at the end of the day, that helped me a lot. That's because I take a picture, and also part of the remodeling now, I put TVs on in front of the patients on the wall. Basically between the intraoral photo CT scan, and they love it. They love looking at their own skull on the CT. They just love it. They're like a kid in a candy shop. They're like, is that me? Is that how?
That's how I feel with the Medit. When I'm scanning for the crown and they're seeing that image pop up simultaneously, they're wowed.
See, I'm going to buy the Medit. Yeah, I've been looking at it.
I want some commission there.
No problem.
Give me some commission.
I'm sure Mouthwash gave you commission. Yeah. So, but they always ask, do they ask? I'm sure you have a CT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do patients tell you that, is this how I'm going to look when I die? When they look at their skulls? It's crazy. It's just...
They love it. I don't know what it is. Well, anyways, continuing on. I mean, your same day numbers, I think, are another good spot that kind of gives a window to your success. You're consistently able to do 20, 30,000 a month in same day treatment. Talk a little bit about, was that always something you harped on when you bought the practice, or is that kind of a shift?
I also learned that through podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We're so lucky in this day and age in dentistry that every day you can go to a CE while you're driving to your work or going home. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. When else can you get this much information? Thanks to Howard Fran, which was a monumental person in this. But I didn't do it initially, and I feel that a lot of it is through hygiene checks. When you see patients, you can talk to them, and I feel that patients love being accommodated. I feel that they I never push. I don't say, if this really bothers you, I'll be happy to see if I can get you in the other room. I'm just going to move the patient there, blah, blah, blah. I don't have that much room even to do this. I have only two chairs to myself besides the hygiene. So it's not easy, but it's very instrumental. If you have a lot of chairs, it's obviously much easier.
For sure. And I think you haven't let that be an excuse for yourself. The lack of space, you've made it work, and to the point where you're consistently outperforming practices that use the software and same-day treatment.
I believe in adapting. Darwin's, the creature that survived was the one that was able to adapt to the new environment. If you try to change the environment, you're not going to succeed. The most powerful person didn't survive in that story. The one that was able to adapt, you have to work with what you've got. That's life. In a nutshell.
That's really cool.
You have to make the best out of what you have.
For sure. Well, we built you up enough. Let's say we talk about some things you've fallen short on.
Yes, that's what I want to hear.
So, we've touched on the collection issue. It sounds like that's getting helped with a bit of outsourcing and that. So it's because I also was looking at your early in the year numbers, looking like, oh, this is like getting so great. And then as it gets closer to the month we're in currently, the problem seems to get fixed. So that's
Yes, that's why I'm giving too much bonus. I have to up the goal.
Yeah, I hear you. I think the biggest gap of underperforming area for you is hygiene.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
The reappointment, correct?
Reappointment is...
So here's why.
No, not so much reappointment. I'm going to talk about some other things. Her hourly average is low. She's at $102 an hour last month. That's actually in the 10th percentile of Brex's on the low end. And her daily is about $770. That's about the 25th percentile. So she's low on her hourly and she's low on her daily. What do you think is the story there?
That is, I own that, and that's my responsibility. It's directly my fault because this hygienist is 60 years old. She's been in this practice for now. I know these are gonna all sound like excuses, but that's just the reality at this point, and I'm intending to change it. But she sat me down when I was about to walk. I was about to walk away from this practice during the negotiations, and she basically sat me down and said, if you go ahead and try to make this happen, you will be rewarded big time, and basically talked me into buying the practice. And later on, I found out that they had gone to the seller and said that if this guy doesn't buy the practice, they were going to walk away. That was a different story. So the staff really wanted to make it happen. But why am I telling you this? Is because this person is very instrumental in bringing in knowing the patients and introducing me to the patients. However, she may not be producing as much, but she's selling for me in diagnosis. So when I go to she has a list of, she's producing money for me by co-diagnosis.
Can't you do both though?
She could do both. She could be more productive, but her personality is laid back in such a way that she has extremely loyal patients that drive sometimes an hour to come to her. They don't care a bit about me, but they come to see her, drive to come and see her. And I felt that, at least initially, I felt that I can either push her. She's 5 years away from retirement, or I can either do that and really push her and get monetary, at least initially, or I can let her be, but make sure that she sells for me. And I chose that path. I know it's not ideal. I know I'm going to...
I think it all paints the picture of this office just screams like it is all dependent on your production, hitting the numbers. Like there's very little passive income happening here. It's all your hands.
It's all me. It's all me. And it's wrong. It's not supposed to be, because the system's supposed to run on its own.
Yeah, and your dream of an office is a 10-12 chair, multiple doctor, multiple hygienist office, and the office you're building is solely based on you.
Exactly right. And part of that reason is that I haven't sat down with them as much. I have been, once I took over, after a couple of months, as if the floodgates opened and the word got around, patients were coming through the door like crazy. So I really didn't invest time into sitting and training the team and really go over that. So now I am going to, this is my goal. I am going to do it. And I brought a younger hygienist. She's 10, 14 years of experience, which I'm going to, now that I have both of them, I'm going to start sitting down with them and really try to explain in a way. I felt that I would love to keep this woman happy as long as possible, even if it means I make less. It was a decision on my part that even my coach wasn't happy with, but I just felt...
You know what I'm kind of seeing? We talked earlier about how you don't make the decision for the patient when it comes to selling treatment.
Correct.
But what you're doing with this hygienist is you're kind of making the decision that she's not able to grow. Like if you tell her, show her different types of ways you wanted to do it, that she'll not be able to hand it or resist it or whatever the excuse may be. But you're kind of, you see how you're kind of doing that with her.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right, because I talked to her 2 months ago about giving injections to patients. And she was very open. I was surprised. I was checking my email. I saw this CE at a university, major university close to my office, and I said, "Do you want to take this?" She said, "Oh yeah, I'll be interested." And I said, "I'll pay for it." She's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be interested." So she went in and took a week-long CE course so that she can numb people, and got the license and board certification. And in that CE, she met this other hygienist, which she brought to me and said, "This is a good one for our team, because I had talked to her that we need somebody to help you, blah, blah, blah." Because right now she's booked 3 months. If you call my office and say, "I want to get a cleaning," I have to wait 3 months. So, I think that I have to just change my vision. I think you're absolutely right.
I think you just got to open your mind up a little with her, and let her surprise you in more ways. Because I feel like, her growth has been stymied. I feel bad
for her. I feel like she's at 60 years old. She probably wants to cruise. Let me just let her be. I just want her here because patients are happy to see her and they really love her. And she's a very good hygienist. She's excellent. Like, I rarely have any problems. She does OSHA well. She's such a good person. And I love this woman. She's a big part of my practice. She's a superstar. But I have to learn to talk to her in a way that I don't feel like she's getting offended, or maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. Maybe she would like it even.
Well, like, what could you take on in the next week around this relationship that might put you guys in a different space?
What do you mean? I don't get the question.
Like, what could be the first step of kind of reshifting this relationship? And
I think I'm gonna. Okay, so this is the other thing. Now we have new computers, because and the old computers it was horrible to bring up the practice by numbers. So maybe that would be a good thing. I can say, okay, let's upload these now. Do your registrations, and let's have you track things, and let's. This is what you should. This is what the fluoride should be percentage. This is. But again, going back to Rohit, I don't know what the average should be. So Rohit, we need this soon. I would love to give them some guidelines of what things are supposed to be, what normal is, what average is, and then, because what they say, what it gets measured gets better, or something along those lines.
Something like that.
Improves. Yeah. What gets measured improves. Is that correct?
I don't even know if that's correct, but I know what you're talking about.
If you look at numbers, you get better.
You get better, exactly. That should be the PBN slogan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that kind of goes with the hygienist. It's very producing. I like the idea of starting to reshape that relationship you have with her. I think she'll really surprise you. I've already can tell where she's improved with the hygiene pre-appointment. You guys were at a much, much lower percentage a few months ago, 50, 55. Now you're getting up to the high 80s, mid 80s pretty consistently. So I see the growth there, and I know.
And that's exactly what I've been talking to her. I said, do not let anybody walk out of here. They had a system before that they would have patients write in their own handwriting a postcard, and they would receive it in the mail, then they would call and they would schedule. But I said, that's okay. Just put it on the books, still fill out the card. But if they want to change it, do it. But we need it on the books, because somebody is going to send them a free hygiene, and then they're going to walk away and go to the free hygiene.
Of course. Yep. All right. Couple other things I see. It has your overhead stuff on there. Overhead looks high.
Very high.
Yeah. 70% and upwards. Where is that coming from? Is it fixed costs?
It's coming from $100,000. No, $80,000 on a CT scan monthly. I bought a PRF machine. I bought a piezo unit. I bought.
So when you look at on your reports,
on this,
when you look at your reports, it's
the
not so much.
Supplies is off the roof. The supplies. I bought so many equipments and upgraded stuff.
Do you feel like most of these were one-time costs versus like
Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Is there any areas that you like you can more control?
I am sure that, for example, I think where I am with personnel is not bad, but I think that the clinical costs are out of whack. Business costs. Oh, this is what's going to make you very surprised. What I said to my staff was at the beginning, because we were so short-handed initially, I said to them, listen, we don't have enough to bring people to clean the place. I don't have enough to give you benefits of anything. That's it. But they said, okay. So we started working, and I realized that we would run over in lunch, and we would get, and the poor assistant or poor front desk girl or hygienist, they would have to get out to get lunch. So I said to them, I'm going to buy you lunch every day, and I'm going to pay you over lunch, which any of my friends, I said, they thought I'm totally crazy. But what gave me was that I thought to myself that these people don't have to worry about getting lunch. The lunch gets delivered to the office. We have a deli next door to us. I made a deal with them. They give us a discounted, and they come, and I pay for it every day. And it elevated instantly. I can't describe the feeling. Just a little lunch. So how much do I spend per day? I spend maybe $40 a day. But what I get is so much back, because they sit, they eat for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I remember the previous seller, he made them take off, and he told them, you have to take off like, I don't know, half an hour, an hour. And let me tell you, they took off exactly 60 minutes.
Oh yeah.
But now they take a bite, 10 minutes, they get up and run, and they're so much happier.
That's such a cool idea, because think about, like, if you're an hourly worker, getting a free lunch every day is like huge. Not even to mention like the inconvenience of having to think of what you're going to have for lunch, going to get it, the whole thing. And now it's just there.
Guess what they're doing in Apple,
What's
the company, or in Google, in the company. The employees, they go down, they can have anytime, anything they can, they can exercise, they can eat, they can play ping pong. They can do, the employees should feel that they should be comfortable. In my opinion, yes, it costs. I calculated it's going to cost me maybe around. So let's say at the highest $50 a day. Okay, 5 days a week, $250, $1,000 a month. It's going to cost me $12,000 a year. I can either do that, or I can save $12,000 a year. When you have a practice over $1 million, $12,000 and happy employees, where they don't have to do, and they have their blood sugar is high, and they don't have to, and they save money on buying lunch. Why not? Although they came to me last week and said, you know what they said? They said, we don't want you to buy us lunch. Buy us health insurance instead. Guess what? Health insurance is going to cost less.
Wow.
And they want me to do that. So
wow.
Because they said we don't have health insurance, we like it. And I looked into it. I think it's going to end up being less than 10 grand, what close to it. But still, they want it. And they said they're going to bring their lunch.
That's awesome. And I think too, like, I bet that I would almost guarantee that lunch allows you to do the same day treatment that you do. I would almost guarantee it.
If I want to put patients at lunch or to bring, I don't care. I don't even say anything. The front desk, do you know the feeling I was telling you on the 16-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you know what? That was 12 to 1. That's what it was.
Awesome.
I'd rather do an implant in that time, but maximize the time.
Yeah. Kudos to you. It's one of the many ways you've thought outside the box of a normal dentist and a normal owner, and that's paid dividends in your tremendous growth this year. Yeah.
And guess what? The deli, all their employees are my patients now. Sure. They come, And I said, I have to give them the same discount, of course. But they send they send me people there. It's just, you have to give to get. I truly believe you have to give. You have to be a giver. The more you give, the more it comes. The more love you give, the more. I just truly believe that you have to first give before things come. Good things happen to you.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. Those are my big thoughts on the dashboard. I had a couple other things. We touched on your AR being a little out of whack. You know, we have the service now kind of trying to help that out. Your 12-month patient retention, your 9-month patient retention are both pretty low. They're in the 25th percentile for each of those. I think a lot that had to do with your reappointment rate back several months ago being so low.
We were losing a lot of patients were left the practice, because of the previous what was happening. But if I go back, the only thing I would change, one of the things I would change, again, you live and you learn. Every office has a back door, and I should have stayed on top of that back door and kept it as close as possible. You shed patients, okay, because they have either loyalty to the previous seller, or they have, for whatever reason, or they think that the office is chaotic in my situation right before the transition. And and by the way, the seller had hired 2 associates that they turned out to be horrible, and that added to the frustration. Otherwise, the seller was a good dentist. He figured, since my hand is having problems, at least I can hire associates and manage the practice, and that was a big problem. So the patients would come in every time they would see somebody new. But I should have the front desk at least call them every month, because practice by numbers, gives you a list of whoever hasn't been seen in the past 18 months. That is, again, my responsibility. I also think that one of the things that makes me kind of less stressed when something happens, when my assistant screws up, when they don't do things that you want them to do or you think. One of the things I've told myself is, if I'm successful, I own it. If I screw up, I own it. I should own anything that goes wrong in my practice. And that vision has helped me reduce my stress. When I see, for example, I had healing abutments come in for these patients today that I was uncovering, and the healing abutments I gave to the assistant, and the assistant said, basically misplaced it, and we couldn't find it, and I had to find, and so I blamed myself. I said I should have come up with a system that there has a bin that this goes in there, so this doesn't happen. So I feel that the back, shedding patients, these are all systematic things that should change. And once you get to all of those, then things will get better.
For sure. And I like how all the things you framed in a very, it's my responsibility kind of way. The buck stops here, and
exactly.
you don't shy away from the way you're the things that are falling through. You don't blame, you don't put it on others. You're very good at staying responsible, which is really cool to see.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, great. I know I let your name slip earlier. That'll be bleeped out.
Okay. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to train myself to not do that. So
that's okay.
Slipped up.
I didn't realize.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving us a window to your practice. This was extremely interesting and helpful to see, and such a unique story about a specialist in a GP office, and the changes you've made over this year, and the growth you've had, and your willingness to make further changes, and just your being vulnerable and coming on here. I want to really acknowledge you for doing that. It was useful for our listeners. It was super useful for me. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure. I want to thank you for doing this, because this is such a creative idea. When I heard on the podcast that you guys are doing this, I couldn't wait to send you an email and say I want to do this, because it teaches people like you and me 2 years ago when we were in the process of doing this, or a year ago when we were in the process of doing this. It teaches, it's so educational. And when you have real life practices, it's you can't do better than that rather than hypothetical stuff. So I just hope that just like shared practices affected my life, this will affect lives of others for the better.
Nice.
And I think that hopefully that will happen
Nice.
more often.
I think so. Well, thanks again. And that's another episode of the Practice Underwater podcast.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right. That was another interview with our super specialist. He has this very specific vision where he's looking for that 10 to 12 chair office. He wants to get there in 3 years. He wants to own the real estate. He wants it, 400 square feet, beautiful office. He's able to offer anesthesia. He's able to do his high-end specialty work that he's already providing. He wants to have all the different specialties under one roof. It's a very cool vision of kind of like an ideal practice. Like if you're a patient, you would love coming to somewhere like that where literally you don't have to get outside the door for any service you could possibly imagine. And it's that like collaborative work environment where he's got other specialists, a bunch of doctors running around, a well-trained staff. It's really like an idyllic dental office, which I think few are able to get to. And really cool that this doc is going for that. And, one of the big observations that we made is the way he set his office up is not, it doesn't seem like with that in mind. It's so doctor driven and doctor dependent that it's his vision and his practice currently are not matching up. It's like another painter is coming to see his painting and he's like, well, that's not getting you to the Mona Lisa. That's getting you to some other thing that looks totally different. So what were your observations, George, as far as his vision and his current practice setup not matching up?
Yeah, so this is like a super dentist dependent practice. When I look at it, I mean, my goodness, his hygiene percentage is like less than 10. Is it like, maybe under 20% for sure, but it's a very, very small hygiene percentage. And he is very dependent on his own hands. And his specialist background comes through with his average treatment plan size. I mean, $4,000 is the most I've ever seen. So, this guy is definitely a big case guy and his patient acceptance is very high. I mean, 83% of his patients are saying yes to treatment. And so, he is very good at what he does. But the reality is his practice around him isn't really built to grow into a group practice. I mean, he only has one hygienist, but half of his patients are overdue for their cleanings. He's got 47% of his patients are current on their recare, which is a sign that he is ready for a little bit more organization, another hygienist, and, to start ramping that up because ultimately his retention is fine. He just has a lot of patients sitting out there that are overdue for their cleanings. And, he might not have that many patients right now, but that's really his biggest problem. You're not going to have an office with multiple dentists, specialists, and this kind of like utopia of dentistry without enough people to support it. You need enough patients coming through those doors, enough hygienists to keep a recare base that has a large enough amount of need to spread it across multiple providers. And so for me, it would be a lot of marketing, patient retention, growing the patient base, because the dentist right now is a rock star. It's the practice around them that needs to sort of grow into that. And it's mainly a people problem. I mean, his staff seems to be great. It's just the patients through the door. And I think his treatment plan size is really something that is like his practice is where it is because he treatment plans the way he does, and he converts treatment like insane. It's
He's
insane.
a beast.
I'm trying to,
Really is.
I'm trying to find like a nice way of saying that, but my goodness, he's an animal,
Yeah.
like this guy's awesome, and his AR is a little bit out of control, considering the size of his practice, and so that would be something that lets me know that, just the AR, I don't look at it and worry about it, but I look at it and that's kind of how I tell how the front is doing. And so it seems like his front desk is likely not super organized. And so really, if he wants to grow into that, if he wants to be stable at a large size with multiple providers doing specialty work, he's got to have a stable source of patients. And it's very, very difficult to do that all through new patients. So you need a heavy recall base. Which is very front desk and hygiene dependent. And those are two areas where his practice is currently not really performing well. And the area where it's performing really well is the area of himself, which he is trying to sort of not be as dependent on. So again, I think it's a very common situation of a dentist-driven practice that is not necessarily heading towards that utopia-like vision of a one-stop shop dental office that has a lot of chairs and a lot of providers.
Yeah, and that's what we say. Like, this practice could be perfect for some other person, but he declared that he wanted, this big office with all these specialties under one roof, and that's just not where he's headed. And I think, unfortunately, that's, I think, one of the ways coaching a little bit failed him in this way. Like, he made a lot of great strides in this year, but he also didn't go towards what he's trying to get to. So I think as he enters this next phase, he's been an owner now for almost a year, that he's going to really have to sit down and decide, is that actually where I want to go? And if it is, I need to start making some shifts.
Yeah. And it's the coach, it's essentially not heading towards their vision, right? Like you can do anything. There's like 100 different ways to make money in dentistry, but what's your vision? What do you want in life? Nothing off the table. And the strides that he's made have been fantastic financially, but they haven't taken him towards his goals. And so ultimately that's the biggest problem.
For sure. And I think he has the hardest thing to get. He has the clinical skill set and he has the ability to sell treatment like an animal. Like, that's so much harder to do than kind of the office changes, getting more new patients and adding a hygiene day. Those can be done with relative ease, but doing clinical procedures takes years and thousands of dollars to learn, and selling treatment is extremely difficult, and to the high level he's doing it. So he has the hard skills. Now it's the soft skills that he has got to acquire.
Yeah, and I guess I would take objection to the easier or harder of the equation, because I'm somebody that's better at the other things that you said were easier. But I guess for me, it's just the fact that, they're just different. For him, it might feel easier to be a big case guy, and do really complex dentistry because that's his training. For me, my training is very heavily based on the non-clinical part of dentistry. And so I think for him, it's going to be a lot of how does he use, because he is a practice by number subscriber, but he's not necessarily utilizing the software to its fullest potential because he doesn't know, given his goals, what metrics matter most. And in this case, it's retention, front desk utilization, new patient flow. Like, those are the things he needs to be following. And he needs to be tracking his retention, and he needs to be looking at, using the software to follow up with overday recare and doing the things that it can do to help him. It's not the software's fault that it's not being used. I think people a lot of times will look at practice by numbers and say it's like this useless piece of software with these pictures. And it's like, it's not. That just means you don't know how to use it. And this is a perfect example of somebody who's a happy subscriber, but just isn't using it the way that it can be used. And so if he wants to get to his goals, then he needs to sort of use, for example, his recall current percentage as a guide for when he's ready for another hygienist, right? Because he's probably going to have to get 4 hygienists to meet that vision. And so, when to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, when are those jumps being made? And that's what the metrics tell you. And so he definitely needs them to kind of guide him along the way.
Yeah, and it's an easy pitfall to get into with practice by numbers because there is a ton of numbers there, and it can overwhelm people, and it can make you kind of try to push it aside and not want to look at it because it's like, oh, there's a lot going on here. But it's so valuable when you take the time to understand it and then how it drives decisions. It's from the most empowered place you could make decisions. Data driven. You can't. Numbers never lie, as they say. So I think as he gets clear in that vision and commits to it, I think we're going to see a much different office when we have him come on in several months down the road.
Awesome, Matt. I think you did a great job in this interview, and I'm really, really excited for this segment in general. You guys let us know how we're doing. I think this has been a lot of fun for Matt and I. Of all the podcasts I've ever recorded, Practice Underwater has been the most fun. I just can't get over how much I'm enjoying this. And, I hope that you guys have enjoyed it too, because to be honest, this is the most fun I've ever had on air.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the first podcast I'm doing, but I look forward to these interviews. They're fun to do. They're fun. The numbers are fun to look at. George, talking to you is a joy, of course. let us know. Like you said, let us know what we're doing. Anything you want us to change up. But this has been super exciting for us. So thanks again, guys, for listening. That was another episode, Practice Underwater.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we could look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.